there's a strain profile here too. We can answer whichever of these questions we want. Some of them aren't very relevant. The first one is distribution. Where's the geographical center and where else does it exist?
The house.
Clearly it exists at the house. Do we want it to be that isolated? Like, there aren't even any other vampires out of town. Like, it's this family.
As far as we know.
Yeah, I like that they just don't know. Like, there's no others known, but they could be.
Can they produce children once they're vampires? How does this family actually propagate?
Well, maybe once you fed, like your body.
When you're alive, you can do
working.
it.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think at least maybe we could even include it in the 5 years period, because I think of, you bring people for approval, they do the ritual, they become inducted into the family, and then I imagine them having children. But if they have a narrow window, you have to keep bringing in new people, even though the consequences are so monstrous.
Yeah.
So maybe they have that 5 years to kind of live their life, they can have kids, and then it winds down, it gets harder to have kids, to go out in the sun.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then you're stuck in the house.
I like that. So maybe their thing would be like, the proper practice is wait until people have had children, but in the common event that there's some other thing going on, we need to bring people in now, during this 5 years, have some kids so we can keep the family going.
Yeah.
Which would be like, you have 5 years and then you're going to be an undead monster and have to stay in this house all the time. So go out, find someone to have children with, and abandon them.
Are babies born vampires too is another issue, because if we have this ritual to induct people, do we have to induct children, or is it kind of an automatic inclusion? That's the thing that I haven't
I
really...
think once you've been turned, if you have a child, it would be vampiric.
Because we have a situation we're talking about here where one person is a vampire, one person's not. They can have a child, so what happens?
What if we do it like,
Maybe it's a dominant trait.
maybe the induction is for people who are not blood members of the family.
Okay, that makes sense.
But it's done ritually, because if you're the child of a vampire, at a certain age, like say 22, I think was mentioned, you will turn. Like you've already had the initiation, so you are a normal human up until you're 22, and then even without the initiation, you will change.
Okay.
And so they are ritually like given the blood,
Okay.
and
What if the ritual is the reason behind the family connectedness of knowing when someone's in danger, you've tasted the
you
blood,
have
to be
so
brought
you
into
don't
the
get that. That's the piece that distinguishes whether you've had the ritual or not. So it's kind of,
Okay.
you don't have the same close bond with other people.
Okay, I like that. And like in most cases, they do give the initiation to people, but there could be a case if somebody wanted to play a weirdo.
And if someone runs away from the family,
Yeah.
then you don't know what's happened to them. Are they still alive? We don't know.
Yeah, I like that a lot.
That would be neat.
Okay, so the next thing to talk about is the high, what it feels like to feed. Now, I feel like for this to be gothic, like for this to fit those tropes, this should be something like, this kind of needs to be like sexual ecstasy. Like, I think that element of vampire myth is so strong. It would be really fitting, and also it would fit in well with what we're setting up, because it's like old world versus new world. It's the underpinnings of the family and then the veneer. This could be something you do alone. Like, we don't feed around each other. We feed privately. You kill someone, you have this experience by yourself.
And I think the imagery of, even hovering, I don't know if we do that, but, hovering over someone in the bed, taking their breath, it's
It's very
yeah, I
sexual.
don't want to say romantic, but I can't think of the right word.
It's very sexual. How does that happen when we can't?
Yeah, do we hover? That's another issue. that we talked
You just have
about.
to be invited in.
Yeah,
And it's not that hard to get invited into someone's house.
it's true.
And I like the idea of playing with breath and having it, that feeling of holding your breath for a really long time, and eventually you just have to gasp for air, and it's kind of a relief. It feels good in a way.
Yeah.
On top of the erotic feeling,
Yeah,
it might be.
I like that. So, cool. And I really like how the contrast with how stifled everybody has to be in the situation, and how neurotic and compressed it would be in this house.
Yeah.
Like, everybody in the house is sort of having this experience, and it's a huge part of what they are. It's feeding, it's everything to them, but nobody can talk about it or do it like
And
totally
that's
kept out.
totally Victorian era values.
It's very old fashioned.
How much do people in town know or suspect?
I would guess that people know, there may be rumors of, occults, of just being generally off, of maybe even being demonic, and I would guess that maybe people might even guess vampires, but not what kind of vampires they are. Probably a lot of, folklore and just kind of vaguely, demonic guesses about them.
Okay.
That's my feeling from what we talked about.
What do you think?
I like the idea of there being rumors. I kind of like the idea of there being like some, like I'm thinking of like a PTA mom somewhere who's like, I'm just worried about their old people. You never see them. I'm worried about if they're getting proper care. I don't know if there are any doctors there. They're so reclusive.
Yeah, I think that there should be a lot of rumors flying around about the family, but nothing specific either.
Yeah, there's a lot of concern maybe because the family like has all of these businesses and people seem to drop out, but there isn't a lot of detail about it. Like they're so closed book. Like they might have a certain reputation of being very old fashioned, and like when someone dies, which is what we happens, they don't have a very big funeral. They don't do any of the big trappings. There isn't a lot put in the newspaper. They're very hush hush.
There should be a graveyard on the grounds.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes.
And so the funeral happens at the house, and that's the end of it. You can't go to a church.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, no open caskets.
yeah, and there's you open it at the very end of the ceremony. Everybody claps. But I like maybe the demonic element could be overbearing if it's too much. It might be too hard to function in the town.
Yeah.
So what if the sense is that there was something like that in the family's history, and so everybody's sort of like, this family screwed up because of this thing that happened, and everybody has their ideas about what that thing was and when it happened, and that's why they're so weird now, is the sense, and that way it gives you deniability. Like if you're a young one and you go into town, people are going to have questions, they're going to look at you funny, like, hey, do you know anything about, like, you feel like their grandparents must have done something really fucked up, and you feel like maybe they know about it, but if they say they don't, then maybe they don't. Like, sometimes people don't know about their families.
Yeah.
Now we'll do the trait guidelines. So this is just a list of the guidelines for each of the 4 categories: personal, spiritual, physical, professional, what kind of traits we could have here. So there are a number of ways we could do this. We could make it mostly free-form and just invent traits. We could write a list. So like in the intervening time between the session, I could actually write a list of traits to choose from. Or we could write a guideline like a spiritual trait has to be something like this. Like it has to be a psychic ability, or it has to be, an empathic thing.
Well, it would make sense if there were guidelines, especially since it's kind of
In the family.
in the family. Yes, exactly.
So there should be resemblance again.
Okay.
I'd like to all like pitch and vote on a few ideas, or maybe have a bigger list and then draw a few from it.
That sounds good.
Okay.
Seems fine to me.
A bigger list, and then you just choose from like what you'd like. So let's talk about like what kind would be appropriate, and then maybe from that, what we'll do is write a guideline for me as I write them,
Okay,
and then I'll just write a list.
that sounds good.
So like personal traits. So these would be traits that relate to personal relationships. This definitely seems like the kind of vampire that would have a thrall, like a Renfield, to me, because there are like servants in the house. You can like get one of the servants on your side, that sort of thing.
Okay.
Does that seem
Yeah.
Yeah. Minions.
okay? What other kind of personal traits?
This also seems like the kind of vampires who are going to be able to just like have paramours and enamored people. Like, come with me, sparkly, sparkly. Not literally sparkly, but sexy face.
Yeah.
That sort of thing.
That might make the feeding a little easy if we just
True.
because they have to invite you, but you could be like, invite me in your house, and then like, okay, and it's kind of
Yeah, I
Well,
don't want this to be
easy to
like
get around.
like proper suggestion. I want this to be more like seduction.
Yeah.
just like charming.
Yeah.
Kind of. Okay.
Vampiric seduction is into it.
Yeah. Like I'm not thinking like literal hypnotic suggestion here, but more like beguiling.
What about like unnatural presence? And that would basically be like you could make it so that you seem a certain way to people. So it's not like mind control,
Yeah.
but it's like you can.
Okay.
Their perception.
And that's really broad because it could be, negotiating in whatever,
Yeah.
in a courtroom or something, and you can seem really like
That's what we're
powerful, and you can be seen sexy. You can seem.
And those could be different traits. And so as I write these,
Okay.
I could be like, if you're like lawyer guy, you can stand up and make people totally trust you instantly and be like, oh, just like Uncle Jack, like oh, he's got
Paragon of
that
justice.
presence.
Okay, so that I like that slight different vein of credibility. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Sounds good.
Other personal things.
Are we gonna make 4? Is that our?
Well, we're all just coming up with personal ideas at this point for the
Okay.
personal category. We do have to have guidelines for the others as well. So we've got presents, we've got minions, any other personal stuff.
We could talk about the depth of the kinship gift. Maybe some people know more than others, so somebody can read, not read it. Maybe somebody can sense emotion, somebody can't. Like, how deep does that go? And you could have imbalances in who knows what.
I kind of like kicking that over to spiritual.
Okay.
Because this is, it could definitely work for interpersonal.
It makes sense as spiritual, though.
I like the idea of,
a bond, yeah.
and especially like losing your human spiritual traits to develop an emotional attachment to the family.
Okay.
Seems very thematic to me.
Great.
Other personal stuff relating to family, relating to friends.
I like the presence. I like the idea of being able to get a thrall. Maybe this is just me, but I like the idea of being able to, secrecy, like being able to.
Being good at deception? Is that kind of what you're...
Well, because for these vampires, it's going to be important to be able to have people who keep their secrets. And it would be interesting if there was some... This might fall into spiritual again, or professional even, but being able to exert secrecy in some way.
To silence people.
What about pact? You have abilities where like you can develop a pact that is binding, so if you can get someone to agree to something, you can like enforce it.
And that fits into the invitation thing. It's like, you have to get people's agreement, but once you do...
Yeah.
You're held.
Okay. Works for me.
I like that idea.
Okay, so we've got some guidelines on personal. Spiritual, we've already got the deepening kinship bond. Other spiritual stuff, so this would relate to emotions, potentially to faith. I sort of like visions. I think that's like, again, that's going back to like the Gothic tropes.
What would induce these? It's just a trait that you would take and you'd be able to foresee.
Yeah, it's like getting a vampiric gift, so to speak. Like, if you no longer have your, like, something that grounded you or gave you a resilience in your own emotional or spiritual life, as you became more monstrous, but you got this, you began to be able to have visions of what was going to happen for your family or what was going to be able to happen for you.
I'm just trying to think of the mechanics of gameplay.
I almost like purposeful vision quests, like, the idea of maybe the ritual, gives people an insight, but you can't do it all the time. You're not going to be, feeding off your elder's arms all the time. So, you have to purposely seek it out, but you can under certain circumstances. And you don't necessarily get what you want to see, you just see something.
I like the idea of like an emotional travail that brings on these visions, because then you can have this very like overwrought Victorian, like I'm gonna go out in the rain, like it would be like a person who's under emotional duress puts themselves in a dramatic situation, is like basically just like trying so hard, like being so sorrowful or so elated or so anxious, and then would have this vision, and that would allow you to roll it in gameplay by actually going into a scene to do this.
That works.
That sounds really similar to the way narcolepsy works. Too excited, and then you just...
and then you have a really happy vision, like vampire in the land of chocolate.
So are these visions like of the future? Are they of the present? Are they of a genetic memory? Is that a way we can maybe recall what happened?
I don't know. I would actually like to split these into multiple traits, because it would be cool to have like basically visions are a thing that happens with the family, like sort of a second sight that encompasses a broader, like some people see the future.
Some people see family history.
And I love the idea of going and finding 300-year-old Aunt Agnes who has the future visions. You're like, nobody knows what's going to happen, come on,
Aunt Agnes.
wake up.
And she just won't grumble. And you finally wake her up and she's shit crazy, and she's like,
I also think if we're talking about sucking breath and you have this presence, what about like, I don't know, making your victims or maybe other people like kind of induce a dreamlike state to make it a lot more like people who have been fed upon, may think that it was a dream. And not that they don't know what happened or they don't feel what it is, but it just makes it kind of erodes their certainty of what happened.
That would be neat.
Yeah, I don't know if that's exactly a spiritual ability, but just going along with this kind of thing.
I think that
what about like dream link? Would that be a way to say it?
Yeah.
And that way we could be kind of broad. Like basically, you could give people a dreamlike experience. Maybe you could even, like if you develop this at a certain level, you could have like a shared vision with someone. That wouldn't be a vision of the future. It'd be just like you go to sleep and have a dream and make it so that someone else also has that dream.
So you could share.
I like the idea of, because then I can imagine that, that in vampire movies, you see it a lot of, the vampire comes into dreams and then comes in person, after nights of increasingly intense dream connection. Yeah. And that there's a stronger connection to the victim of that it's erotic because maybe you have a connection with them more than like your cattle. Yeah. It's like we get to know each other more and more and more, and then I just have to feed. Like it just that's how you complete that connection.
I think maybe this dream thing, which I find to be really striking, maybe that should be the center of like the spiritual traits. Like there is this dream experience that they have access to, and that's sort of like where all this stuff branches off of. And some of them have it, some of them don't. And
I like that narrow, kind of getting rid of the line between dreams and visions too, of, that would make it a lot more, what to trust. Is that just a dream? Is that a vision?
The mutability of it is nice.
And actually, this could come back to our theme, where maybe the family has had visions in the past of the world to come, and sometimes maybe if you're an older vampire, you go to sleep and you're back in the old days. And so the line becomes very blurry for you. Like, the past and the present kind of coexist and bleed into each other. Like yesterday I had a conversation with someone who's been dead for 50 years.
Yeah, that sounds great.
That would be cool.
Okay, physical. Personally, go ahead. Let's hear open first, so go ahead.
I wanted to put it out there. I imagine hovering, but that also seems really overdone and a little bit much, so I don't know what people think, but there's the hovering over people. But do we need that? Because I just imagine the difference, hovering over someone in bed or standing next to them, bending over, kissing them on the forehead to death. I don't know.
I think hovering would be a great, a thing to put at the top, to show what is impressive in this world. Like, these are not vampires who are soaring through the night skies.
Yeah, definitely.
If you're experienced, the other younger vampires look on in awe as you leave the ground and turn over in the air and float over the person lying there and feed from them without touching them. It's like, wow, that's what's coming for us as we change.
And floating is very dreamlike. It kind of connects to that.
Cool.
I think it's cool.
Okay, I think the generic, strong physical traits, so strength, speed. Yeah. All that stuff is pretty obvious.
Okay. And I always love the aristocratic, guy in his tight-fitting clothes, all oppressed, and then, having those rages and incredible strength, and just terrifying, and you're like, oh, please go back to self-oppressing.
Yeah. Strength, speed, what's it? I actually kind of like the idea of fits, or feats, sort of, so to speak.
Fit. I like that too. An emotional attachment, so it could be a passion of some kind that takes you.
Not physically fit. Okay.
Yeah,
like Victorian.
Like a fit of rage.
Yeah.
Fit of melancholy. Yes.
What about, this is kind of oddball, but this, we've been doing a lot of stuff that connects back to the Gothic tropes. What about bringing it forward and making it, because we want this to be kind of modern. I don't know if you've ever seen, we've been watching a lot of Doctor Who and Sherlock, and Stephen Moffat does this thing where he does the camera zooming around, when Sherlock's looking at something. Or have you seen the show?
I've seen Sherlock. Yeah.
He does the camera thing, getting details. Something like that. Something that seems very new and has a visual element.
Maybe extreme sensory focus or something. Is that what you're talking about?
I'm thinking of a
super deduction.
Comprehensive sensory experience where you could I just watched The 11th Hour. It was one of the first. It was the first of the new Doctor Who episodes with the new Doctor. And he's walking around in the park, and he's had this conversation, done all this stuff. And then he's wait. And the camera tracks back and is scanning around his steps, going through everything he saw in the park, finally honing in on this one guy who's standing there pointing this opposite direction from everyone else, and then scans around him and goes down to the ID badge that he's got on.
Okay.
And it's sort of like photographic memory, basically.
Yeah.
Where it goes back and he picks out that detail retroactively.
Oh, like your memory castle.
Yeah.
Your memory palace.
I like the idea of that too, because then you can draw on that later.
Yeah, it almost seems like hyper awareness with sort of really fast thought.
Yeah, basically,
but it has to sort of be intentional. You have to stop and go when you think. You can't.
Yeah.
You have to give them the.
And a big memory, so to speak.
Maybe not that obvious.
I do like the you said memory castle, and that's basically what I'm thinking. And that makes sense with our idea of becoming insane from the years of memories. I mean, if you had an eidetic memory for 300 years, you have a lot going on. And so that could be, you start to live in that more and more.
Yeah.
Like, you have all these memories that are like, what did, like that night I had with that woman in the 1800s, like, what did she smell like?
Yeah.
I'm back there. Like, I've got that all in here.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, sure. So, and that's kind of a double-edged sword too. As an ability, it might be useful. It might be painful.
Now we do have this in physical, but physical does apply to senses. So I think as long as we keep it sensory, keep us sensory focused, then we can use it for physical. Let's see. Professional is skill, standing. It's a lot about class. It's about money. We were reading The Gift of Success and decided it was inappropriate, but I do like the idea of like a charmed life as an optional trait that some have and some don't. And that would be cool because it would make your character very valuable. So that if you want to play somebody who's like a little bit of an outsider, it's like, this kid makes money. Like, we don't agree with him on everything, but if we send him into town, he will come back with addition to the fortune.
Yeah.
I'm thinking back to the presence idea. What about like a credibility? Like, I just want to loan this person money or give it, like, they seem like they know what they're doing. Like, this person, whether they do or not, they just, that's the person you pick to give the loan to, that's the person you put in charge of the business. They just seem like they know what's going on.
Cool.
And that kind of explains the charm without, you don't have to have the ability, but you also can't just, you get fired eventually if you don't, like, show up. So,
Okay.
But it's easy for you. People give you a chance really easily.
Okay.
Which I would enjoy as an ability.
Yeah. If you guys don't object, I like both of those because I think those are slightly separate ideas.
Okay.
Yeah.
So maybe we could do like ethos on the one hand. So, you are respected, you are trusted, people give you a chance. And then also have, this gets to more like the environment, like things go right for you.
Yeah.
And I can imagine a character having both of those, and I can also imagine one without the other.
I also thought as a different way to phrase your idea of this kind of charmed life, it may be that competitors suffer bad luck more than you suffer good luck. So I see that, this fishing industry, you have old-fashioned boats, your guys are all drunk, you bring in the brand new crew, specially trained, like nice new equipment, and it just all fails for some reason. And there's no reason to describe it. They should outcompete you. They should be better. Their warehouse is painted nicely. But it doesn't work, and nobody knows exactly why.
I like that.
So they're stuck with this family that does things the old traditional way.
Yeah, it's much better. We'll call it like ill wind. And it's like bad things happen to the people around you.
And what's great is if we have the families fighting each other, that ill wind may spread in the family. So you have a lot of those Victorian, curses that seem to affect the family because of family conflicts.
That's great. I really like that.
I like that too. That is good.
Let's see. What about, too, because it'd be nice for them to be able to excel at specific areas or fields of knowledge. So what about, I don't know what we would call it, but basically this is a family of leisure, like that's their class, they don't really have to work. So what if one of the things they can get is just an interest, like a thing that they've picked up that they become very good at and sort of obsessed with. I don't know what we'd call it, but
Hobbyists.
hobbies doesn't, I'm thinking of peculiar occupation, something like that. Like just like certain members of the family are just like, he keeps bees, like he's over on that side of the lane, he keeps bees and he's just into it.
I like the idea of because there's a Victorian phrasing for it, for like the newest obsession or so-and-so's peculiar, curious hobby.
Curious hobby.
Or peculiar occupation, strange obsession.
Yeah, and that could be something that could change over time, conceivably. So that would be kind of an interesting thing of, like during any given game, you might say, okay, this is my thing. I picked this game. This is the thing I'm doing lately. Like, because I like the idea of picking up and dropping hobbies. Like, I know everything there is about, like medieval literature, and then next week you're like, oh, who cares about that? I don't even remember. Now I'm into like flowers.
I like both of those. Let's do peculiar occupation, and then let's also do like newest obsession. And that can be two traits that maybe you can't have both. Either you're a dilettante and every day it's something new, or you're like, ever since you returned, you're into this thing, and that's what you do. And then there could be some interfamily conflict about that as well.
Don't forget your eidetic memory where you remember every bee that you've ever kept. You name them.
Well, maybe
you share their dreams sometimes.
Maybe you remember all of the queens. Like, all of the queens have names, but you aren't concerned with the drones or the workers, but you know all of your queens, like you can name...
And you make tiny plastic crowns for them.
Yeah, you've been naming them alphabetically since
That could be your new obsession.
Like tornadoes.
Yes.
Okay.
And that would be really fun to see those different things. Like you could have there's Constance, and Constance has been keeping bees since 1904.
I think the fact that you're still talking about this demonstrates that you should have this trait, if in fact you do not have this trait.
I think what's great too is that's so gonna date people, because you're gonna have people, some people who are into like medieval manuscripts, and then you're gonna have people who are like, I'm obsessed with computers, and it's just gonna be like such a this is my life, I need to do this every day, and it's gonna be so weird to have these old hobbies
and
croquet.
the property is big enough to encompass them. So if you have this weird hobby, there's going to be a place on the grounds where that hobby goes on, and people who are visiting are just like, what is this? Like, this is a game people don't play anymore. People don't know about it, but there they are playing it.
Alright.
Or you could have Great Aunt Agnes, and maybe before she went to sleep every Thursday, she would get everyone out to do the quadrilles with her, to get to do the dances, country dances.
She loves her Macarena.
So we now have the string completed.
Alright.
It has a name. It has all the stuff we need. I'll write up these traits over the week.
Real quick, do we want to ban any traits? Are there things we do not want them to be able to do?
And this is less of a concern here because I'm writing a list to choose from, but you guys should let me know if there's anything you absolutely don't want.
We've already mentioned no
Sparkling.
No sparkling.
and we can't have any true flight if we're gonna have hovering.
Yeah, exactly.
And I would also just in general like to limit things to be not just, I don't like over the top stuff of so strong you can, collapse a building with your fist kind of thing. Like I like, strong enough to scare an average person, but not spinning a bus on your finger or something.
Okay, basically no superpowers.
Yeah, no superpowers.
I
like that.
I may go in a direction of stuff that is a little more clearly monstrous for the older ones, if that's cool with you guys.
That's fine.
That's fine.
And I don't mind that stuff if somebody's clearly a monster that has to hide out, they can have superpowers. I just don't want people, fresh vampires with superpowers.
Yeah, I wouldn't do, when I'm thinking of the upper end, it actually makes me think of a masquerade game that I ran. You were there for this, where it was the first time you guys met Lodovic, and you were at the church and you were running for him, and you jumped that chain link fence. And he plowed through it.
Yeah.
He broke through the chain link fence. That's the limit I'm thinking of.
And that's fine. Yeah,
scary guy.
Yeah.
That guy was a motherfucker.
Cool.
Okay. So yeah, we've got this. So let's take a break, and then we will come back for character creation, and we'll be ready to go.